Do you know the 1985 movie Clue? Then you're probably aware of this initial flop that has gone on to become a comedy cult classic. But what you probably might not know is the amazing musical score by John Morris. And I say might not know because the comedy genre is usually an underrated one. But in this video, I want to take a closer look at Clue and how John Morris crafted a score that not only does the difficult task of balancing all the different tones the movie offers, but elevates it through craft and storytelling. Let's start with a bit of exposition, Tim Curry style. In December 1985, Clue premiered to underwhelming reviews and a poor box office performance. Looking back at it, it's a bit of a mystery why the reception was so poor.
You're a bit late for that!
Although it was director Jonathan Lynn's first feature film, the cast included a murderous row of talent.
You ain't just whistling Dixie.
Tim Curry, Madeline Kahn, Michael McKean, Christopher Lloyd, Leslie Ann Warren, Martin Mull, and Eileen Brennan, and a lot more. On top of that, the movie was being promoted in what I think it's a genius idea as having 3 different endings, inserted randomly throughout theaters, meaning you didn't know which one you would see. I mean, if I saw this promo on TV in 1995...
Clue. It's a comedy with 3 different endings. Whodunit depends on where you see it. Rated PG.
I would be all about it. But I wasn't, because I wasn't even born yet.
Oh my God.
Interestingly, the creative strategy was considered a gimmick by some critics and was blamed for the movie's failure.
I think it would have been better just to do all 3 endings, because since you're right, it doesn't matter who did it, then why do we only get one?
Even though I prefer the ending that includes all 3 endings,
What do you mean, don't deny it? I'm not denying anything.
dismissing such a unique and creative idea makes me feel...
Flames on the side of my face.
Flash forward 35 years, the movie has achieved a cult following thanks to audiences discovering the playful self-awareness the movie has,
Very well, sir.
the high-wiring balancing act of many genres and tones, and a plethora...
A what? A plethora.
Yes, a plethora of clever dialogue and physical comedy.
He was always rather stupidly optimistic. I'm afraid it came as a great shock to him when he died.
Now, going back to the murderous row of talent the film had, one of those was composer John Morris. Who is the composer John Morris? I'm glad you asked. What if I told you that John Morris was the John Williams of comedy? Well, in a sense, like John Williams and Steven Spielberg, John Morris was part of a creative duo whose contributions had a massive impact on films and influenced generations to come. His 20-plus collaborations with director Mel Brooks created some of the most iconic and comedic moments in films. And a side note here, one of my personal favorite jokes comes in the film High Anxiety, which is a spoof tribute to Alfred Hitchcock.
Foul play.
What I love about this joke is that I think it's a reference to a quote from Hitchcock directed at his composer collaborator Bernard Herrmann. They were discussing music for a sequence in their 1943 film Lifeboat. Where did the orchestra come from? Said Hitchcock. The same place the camera came from, said Bernard Herrmann. I love that. And there's so many more iconic moments that John Morris enhanced with his music. From films like Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, Silent Movie, Spaceball, so many more. And that's just his collaboration with Mel Brooks. There's also The Elephant Man with David Lynch, and of course, Clue. And again, those are just 2 among a slew of others. So that begs the question, why is John Morris still, in a sense, under the radar? Remember that bit about comedy being underrated? yeah, it is definitely a thing. There's numerous film critics who have shed light about this via New York Times opinion columns. And take a closer look at this article from Kevin Fallon at The Atlantic. There, he outlines that a film like Babel, which had 69% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics and also made $34 million at the box office, that film got an Oscar nomination in place of Borat, which had 91% from film critics at Rotten Tomatoes and also made $128 million at the box office. So I think it's like Fallon said, it's hard to argue against that logic, especially when you had critics saying things about Borat like the finest and most thoughtful comedy release so far this century. And this effect, it certainly trickles down to film music and comedies. But here's the irony, it's one of the most difficult genres to write music for. Take composer Theodore Shapiro's work, who, by the way, has composed music to some of the most successful modern comedies, like Old School, Dodgeball, Idiocracy, Semi-Pro, Tropic Thunder, and oh my god, the list goes on and on.
The most challenging ones are the ones that are just naturalistic comedies. I don't have a method. I feel like every time through, I'm sort of feeling my way through it. I guess I try to just think about how music can make as strong a statement as possible and bring some kind of attitude to the movie that can just help define tone and storytelling.
Define tone and storytelling. Let's get back to Clue because I think that's exactly what Morris achieves with his amazing music for the film's title sequence. Now, I want to analyze the main title theme Morris wrote for Clue because I think it does a masterful job at defining tone and storytelling. When Clue starts, the first bit of storytelling we get is John Morris music. Even before we see a single image, his music has begun to tell the story. And for a whole minute, all we get is a shot of clouds. And sure, the clouds look dark and mysterious, but it's John Morris who is carrying all the responsibility of storytelling. And man, what a great job he does. The right tone, that can be a very difficult thing to achieve. It really is about finding the right balance. And we can get a sense of just how tricky this must have been for Morris when we look at the alternate main title tracks that are found on the Clue soundtrack release from label La La Land Records. So let's take a look. Alternate title number 1. To me, that just sounds a little bit too murder/serious. Let's take a look at the alternate titles number 2. To me, that feels a bit too camp, especially when you add those drums. Now that reminds me a little bit of this. But Clue? Man, that's just right. That is right in the middle. Let's take a closer look at notes. Now, the music starts with an ostinato, which ostinato means a continually repeated musical phrase or rhythm. Those 4 notes, man, we're getting a great sense of tension from it. But we're not just getting tension, we're also getting a playfulness from it. And that is thanks to its pizzicato-like rhythm. Now, I mean, imagine if the rhythm was like this. So that rhythm he's doing is definitely doing a great job at nailing that tone. There's mystery and tension, but it's also not that serious. Like, this is fun. Now, I want to think about storytelling. Now, these notes, they are also giving me a sense of an alarm. And that is, again, thanks to its repeating pattern. So, an alarm, I guess, like the type of thing that you do when you discover danger or a dead body. And that's exactly what people do in this movie. When they discover a dead body, they scream as if to communicate to everyone to come and help. And again on the rhythm, now that is also giving me a sense of like footsteps, which funny enough is another thing people do in this movie. They run towards dead bodies. David W. Collins from the podcast The Soundtrack Show, he has a great saying. Great melodies tell great stories. I love that. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the melody. What do people do in this movie when they discover a dead body? They form theories. And then they reject them. And then they debate. And debate. And they go back and forward. And last, they have a confrontation. Also, in case you didn't notice, there's 7 musical phrases, which is 1 for each character. Okay, so let's recap not just the tone that Morris sets, but the storytelling he does in such a short amount of time. Wow, in such a short intro, Morris has given us kinda all we need to know on what to expect from the movie. Okay, now I want to move and take a look at another very important element in Morris's score. So remember, again, when I said music for comedies is hard? Well, it's not just about the difficulty of matching the tone of the film, but equally as hard is knowing when to step away. Let's go back to our friend composer Theodore Shapiro for his perspective.
The most important thing you can do as a composer is to prevent music from going where it shouldn't go. We had a couple of really interesting test cases where there were scenes that played dry and we tried putting music there. It just didn't work as well. It suddenly told you you're about to watch a thing. And it was less funny.
Now, if you focus on the music while watching Clue, you'll notice that there's just not a lot of it. And that's another great thing John Morris does. He carefully navigates the film and doesn't get in the way of dialogues or moments like this.
It's you and me, honey bunch.
So not only is it really hard to do a good job with comedies, but when you actually do a good job, people might not notice it. It's hard to people remember the music when there's none, and you don't have moments like these.
Not so hard! Not so
But not so fast though. Morris does have a moment to shine in Clue.
Follow me.
Now, there is a sequence in Clue where John Morris gets the opportunity to shine. And it comes in the third act of the film, when Tim Curry rapidly runs around the mansion while he explains how the killer did it. Now let's go back one last time to composer Theodore Shapiro for his insights.
The most challenging ones are the ones that are just naturalistic comedies, as opposed to Tropic Thunder or Spy or Blades of Glory, which are genre films that are employing serious scores as counterpoint to comedy on screen.
Now frequently, comedies, they don't feature comedic music. Rather, the music plays it straight to match the genre or tone of the scene, as if to say, music, it's not in on the joke. But in this sequence, Morris goes for the hardest of all. Music that is in on the joke. Funny music, for a lack of a better term. And he does so by incorporating a very common technique called Mickey Mousing, where composers, they synchronize the music to the action that they see on the scene. Now, Morris continues to achieve a great deal of storytelling by employing some of the same techniques he used during the main title sequence. This time it's the melody which features that pizzicato-like rhythm that mirrors the physicality of Tim Curry running.
Then I hurried across to the kitchen. And the cook was in here, alive, sharpening knives, preparing for dinner, and then... the doorbell rang.
And that same melodic phrasing of statement and response, which again kind of reflects the distance that Curry runs from room to room. And what's most impressive to me about this sequence is how melodic and memorable Morris' music is, even within the restraints of that of the Mickey Mousing technique. But don't just take my word from it. Here's the pop duo's Tune Yard's lead singer Merrill Garbus on his love of the soundtrack for Clue during an interview for Little White Lies. The Clue soundtrack taught me that you could turn a movie into a pop song. It taught me that creating something someone goes out the theater humming is beautiful. They go to see your movie for the story, but if they come out singing your song, it is a big bonus and something a person never really forgets. This is the exact experience I had watching Clue as a child, and that happy feeling has stayed with me. I feel like the real culprit here is me. Yeah, you see, I recently discovered the ingenuity of Morris' score from Clue. I'm the one who's overlooked comedy scores in the past, but once I took a moment to carefully study it, the way I approach other film classics, I discover evidence of a level of skill and creativity that is equal to the greatest works to be found in the art of film music.